went to church the next Sunday, and they made an announcement saying that there's, I think, 4 or 5 people that would like to start a study group around the book called A Course in Miracles if anybody's interested. I just knew, it just spoke to me. It was the best that I'd heard in Hinduism and Buddhism and Christianity, I guess, kind of all rolled into one capsule. And that was in 1983. And I've been studying it daily ever since. A Course is a very unique book. It wasn't really authored, it was scribed. And it is written in a Christian language, but its theology, its philosophy, if you will, is more Eastern. It speaks of the dream, the Maya. So it calls this world an illusion. You're going to find its theology, philosophy, its general theme is very, very Eastern. It's also based in psychology. Some have called it a spiritual psychotherapy. The Course says that all healing is psychotherapy because all healing really has to take place in the mind. Again, things that seem to be wrong with our body, things that seem to be wrong with our emotions, things that seem to be wrong with our intellect are really just symptoms. The real problem is in mind. So it's a spiritual psychotherapy. I probably didn't tell anybody I was reading the Course for first 8, 9 years. And not like I was trying to keep it a secret, it just like, it never seemed appropriate. You know, the Course says that sickness is a defense against the truth.
Missed that lesson.
Our whole body is a defense against the truth. You know, we're not bodies, we're eternal, limitless, changeless beings. And there's only one of us. You know, that's who I really am. And that can't be hurt, can't be offended, can't be changed in any way. My belief is there is only one Spirit. And another blasphemous statement, if you'll allow me, is that in truth we're all the Holy Spirit. There is only one. We are the Holy Spirit. Course doesn't tell you that right away, but it's in there. You begin to realize what the Course says is true. The Course says, teach only love, for that is what you are. Love is not an emotion, even though it's experienced that way at first. But the more we get rid of its opposite, which is fear, beliefs that aren't true, then love is just there. The Course says we don't have to seek for love. It's always there. We just have to seek for the barriers we built against it. And what I learned through my Hindu years, my Buddhist years, it's about giving up attachment. And when I got to the Course, I realized what attachment is. As soon as I give anything a meaning, I'm attached. No, it has a meaning for me. I'm attached. For me to truly become unattached, what I have to do is give up my meaning that I think anything has. And the only way I can do that is to say, okay, I don't know what it means. Spirit, tell me. Now we're back to what, as you said, is one of the main themes of the Course, is listening to Spirit.
Reverend Tony Senf holds among his many gifts the ability to explain to newcomers the globally studied spiritual text called A Course in Miracles. Tony, as he prefers to be called, has crossed many spiritual bridges, from studies at a Baptist seminary to an intense pursuit of metaphysics to an even greater pursuit over the past 22 years of A Course in Miracles. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in Cleveland Heights, Ohio in January 2011.
Tony, it's an absolute delight to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you today. I've wanted to do this for a long time. I don't know where to begin because I want you to talk about A Course in Miracles, which is virtually unknown by most people in the world and misunderstood by many who know it. But I also want you to talk about your journey, your life, your preparation for to be an ordained minister from your Baptist roots and other roots I'm not even sure of yet. Let's just begin by saying, right off the top, as a appetizer, why the Course in Miracles is so important in your view for people to see as a way to approach their spiritual understanding.
It's my belief that the Course gets to the root cause of it all. Most of our life is spent dealing in symptoms as opposed to the cause. And I believe that the Course gets to the source, which is our thoughts, our thinking, that it's all in mind.
And if I were to ask you to talk to me as, my name is Ted Henry, I come from Reed Urban, Ohio, I have never heard of A Course in Miracles, but somebody told me I'd be wise to try to understand it. knowing what you know about my level of understanding, how would you describe it?
I would probably first ask you what your spiritual background is.
Okay, I was raised Catholic, conventional Christian, could be a conventional Muslim, Hindu, or Jew.
Yes, could be any of those. But if your background is more Christian, what I would say is the language you're going to be very familiar with, because it's written in a Christian language. However, the distinctions are going to be different for the words that you read. You're going to read Jesus, you're going to read Christ, you're going to read forgiveness, you're going to read heaven, but they don't mean what you thought they meant or what they meant in your Christian tradition. But they will be terms you're familiar with. I would also tell you that A Course is a very unique book. It wasn't really authored, it was scribed. And it is written in a Christian language, but its theology, its philosophy, if you will, is more Eastern. It speaks of the dream, the Maya, if you will, the realm of samsara. So it calls this world an illusion. You're going to find its theology, philosophy, its general theme is very, very Eastern. It's also based in psychology. Some have called it a spiritual psychotherapy. The Course says that all healing is psychotherapy because all healing really has to take place in the mind. It's where real healing takes place. Again, things that seem to be wrong with our body, things that seem to be wrong with our emotions, things that seem to be wrong with our intellect are really just symptoms. The real problem is in mind. So it's a spiritual psychotherapy. It's written in a free verse, iambic pentameter, much of the time, very, very poetic. You'll even find in the last half of the lessons that the titles will either have 10 and later on 20 and 30 syllables in them, each title. Very, very interesting book in the way it's put together. So it's psychologically put together in a psychological foundation. It's also a training program. It tells you that. It's a program in mind training. Basically what it's going to get you to do is to learn how to think differently, how to think more like God, how to think more loving thoughts, which is really beautiful. So it's a Christian terminology, Eastern theology, philosophy, in a spiritual psychotherapy that's a self-training course. As someone once said, there's probably something in the Course to offend almost anyone.
I like the fact that its original language is English. Finally, we have a text in English that can help us not have to worry about false translations.
Yes, it does come from the source. Again, it kind of gets back to the source. I think I heard that Helen Schuckman made the comment, finally a spirituality for intellectuals. And I think that's what scares a lot of people away. They think it's a very intellectual book. It is a different read. It's written in a kind of a different meter, in a different language, so to speak. And it gets a little bit difficult that way. But once you get the basic understanding of the Course, it's as the Course itself says. It's very simple.
Let me throw a tough one at you right off the bat. Intellectuals may be attracted to text of this nature, but they run screaming and howling at anything that's channeled. And yet you say this is scribed. So split hairs. Define what you mean by scribed.
Well, it is channeled material, scribed material, which I myself never really had much to do with. I do believe they're scribed in material, but I think the source of the scribing can be just as off base as anything else. Just because it's scribed doesn't make it spiritual, and I think that's what a lot of people think. When I found out that it was a scribed piece, that Helen Schuckman, who was a professor of psychology at a very prestigious university, and was herself very timid about people finding out she'd heard a voice. She even said that it was something that was a voice that was very compassionate and very understanding, and there's some great works that tell the story of it. But as I found out it was scribed and she wrote this down, I'll have to admit I started reading it with some trepidation, but the more you read it, the more it doesn't matter to me whether it was scribed or not. It's the message, and it supposedly is the voice of Jesus that was speaking to Helen, which was another problem for Helen, because not only was she a psychologist, she was a professed atheistic Jew, and now she's taking dictation from Jesus. So I know it had to be quite confusing for her. But after a while, you get to know this voice, and if it is Jesus, if it is this, I'll say historical Jesus, only meaning he lived 2,000 years ago. I don't think it's a historical Jesus we were taught was Jesus. But whoever it is, if it was Jesus, it's a beautiful soul with a beautiful message that teaches people how to find peace and love and joy in their life.
You said sometimes the language doesn't purport to mean what you think it means because of your understanding of various words and definitions.
Yes.
I have people who say, but Ted, that's blasphemy, that's heresy. How do you reconcile that?
Well, it's blasphemy within their belief system, and I get that. Jesus, when he was on earth, was accused of the same thing. Blasphemy, heresy. You know, him saying, I and my Father are one was total heresy, total blasphemy back then.
Whereas many are raised to expect to find God outside there somewhere, not inside here where I am.
Yes, not inside. And the Course makes a distinction too. It doesn't mean inside your body. But, you know, a lot of times we think, when we say inside, we think of this fleshy thing that we got called a body, and we think it's in there. And the Course says, no, it's in your mind. It's in your mind. After you read the Course Law, you find some things that are a little disturbing to the traditional way of thinking. For example, the Course really teaches that your mind is not in your body, but just the opposite. Your body's in your mind. So this is where we find God. This is where we find Spirit is in mind.
You talked about an initial reluctance to pursue it with great vigor, and yet obviously you overcame that. And I've heard you say, when you give your classes on Tuesday nights not so long ago, that it's the most powerful teaching you've ever come across. That's saying a lot.
Yes, it is. I started off as a Baptist seminary student, and fundamentalism, you know, hellfire, brimstone, and went from there into the Navy. And it was there I started reading some metaphysical work, and I remember the very first one I read was Jonathan Livingston Seagull. That just got me thinking, wait a minute, this doesn't fit, you know. And when I was in seminary even, I would ask questions I didn't have answers to, at least not to satisfy me. And many times their answer was, well, you're not supposed to know that yet, you'll know when you get to heaven. And that just didn't set with me real well. So I left seminary after about 2.5, 3 years with a lot of questions, but still the only faith I knew. So when I started reading some other work, it seemed a little strange. I went from there, long story short, from there into Hinduism, and studied yoga and Hinduism for about 4 or 5 years when I was in the Navy. After I got out of the Navy, I started studying Shaolin. There was a Shaolin master, one of the 5 Shaolin masters outside of China, that I was just so fortunate to find and study under, and I studied Buddhism with him as I was studying Shaolin. And did that for a couple of years, and found a lot of answers in Buddhism, as I had found a lot of answers in Hinduism. Then I went from there to, and I guess it's really what I was all along, to something I still stick to, which I call Tonyism. And I just gleaned from what I had studied, and I came to the conclusion that religion is everyone's personal relationship with God. And so everyone should have their own religion, you know, because it should be very personal. So mine became Tonyism. Somewhere in Tonyism, in there, and out of my Buddhist stage, and I'm a Tai Chi instructor, been teaching that for about 30 years now. I was teaching Tai Chi and was living in Greenville, South Carolina. My brother gave me a book called Love is Letting Go of Fear by Gerald Jampolsky. Beautiful, beautiful little book.
It's the book I should have read first before attempting A Course in Miracles.
Talk
about that a little bit. He's a psychiatrist.
He is. He's a psychiatrist that uses the principles. He's one of the first that I know of that used the principles in his public practice and formed something called the Institute for Attitudinal Healing, and just did some marvelous, marvelous work. And I read this book.
In Tiburon, California, I believe.
Still out in Tiburon, it is. And as I read this book, and it says, based on A Course in Miracles, I'm going, wow, this book is just so dynamic. If this is based on A Course in Miracles, I want to find out what this Course in Miracles thing is. So I called my brother and thanked him, and someone asked me anything about the Course. He said, no. He said, I just like this book. Went to church next Sunday. I was going to a Unity church in Greenville, South Carolina. I went to church the next Sunday, and they made an announcement saying that there's, I think, 4 or 5 people that would like to start a study group around the book called A Course in Miracles if anybody's interested. So I immediately joined that group, and it was 4 or 5 of us who had never picked up the book before. They had just heard about it and figured they'd try to read it and figured we'd do a study group. So we kind of stumbled through it for about a year or so before I left Greenville. But once I started, I just knew. It just spoke to me. It was the best that I'd heard in Hinduism and Buddhism and Christianity, I guess, kind of all rolled into one capsule. And that was in 1983. And I've been studying it daily ever since.
How did you find a place for the studies of A Course in Miracles to fit into your original Christian heritage and interest, and now Christian/unity position as the head of a unity church here in Cleveland Heights, Ohio?
It's really kind of interesting, Ted, because when I first picked up the book, it just spoke to me so much. I just took to it like a duck to water and everything. And it was probably I was a year into it. And all of a sudden, this fear came over me. And I'm reading the book, and all of a sudden, this thought, this is probably just what the devil would want me to read. Because it's just so against. And for a few days, that thought kind of, remained in my mind, and I wrestled with it. And after a while, I'm going, nah. And I just stayed with the Course. But it was amazing that kind of came up from the depths of my subconscious, going, yeah, this is just what the devil would want me to read. So yeah, for 2 or 3 days, it kind of, collided. But other than that, and as I study the Course more, Ted, I can really see where the Christians are saying what they're saying. It's almost like they're so close. I can get being born again. I can get turning your life over to Jesus. I can get all those things except the hell, the fire, the brimstone, the punishment part. But I can really...
The shame, the guilt.
The shame and the guilt.
All the things that are paramount in many organized religions.
Yeah, and the thing is, they use them inappropriately, I believe, to get people to, get them to this love side, this, follow Jesus kind of thing. And I can see where they come with a lot of their terminology. So I can see it now. And it's easier for me to talk to Christians now, because what I do is I kind of, that's why I would ask someone who asked me, my first question is, well, what's your spiritual background? So what I try and do then is relate the Course to that background, because you can, even to Christianity.
Longtime student, so is my wife Jody, 20 plus years in the Course in Miracles, and not only that, it complements, I want to say 100%, the teachings of where we go and study when we're in India with the teacher there. From a Hindu culture, truths that go back 10,000 years that as a Christian I was never taught in school to understand, let alone to acknowledge that they exist. One of the problems I see in trying to introduce new people who might be curious and ask me about it, Course in Miracles, is that I hesitate to ever recommend that they pick up the book and read it by themselves. Now, I know plenty who have and who have profited from it. I didn't, and I also know many more people who have not profited from trying to read it by themselves. What's your view on how it should be ingested?
Well, I'm going to answer that question the way I answer every question when someone says, what do I think someone should do? And my pet answer is, I don't know. I don't have a clue. But I know someone who does. And I'd have them check with Spirit. And I think there are some people that probably picking it up and reading it on their own is a good way to go. It's what I did. I probably didn't tell anybody I was reading the Course for first 8, 9 years. And not like I was trying to keep it a secret, it's just like it never seemed appropriate. It's like, I don't think this is what they want to hear right now, kind of thing. I moved around a lot with my work and so on, so I would go to a Unity church and join the study groups where I usually ended up somehow, doing a lot of the talking. But I guess the real answer to that question is, again, make it very individual, but for most people, I think doing it in a group is the best way to do it, because Spirit speaks to all of us all the time if we let Him. And if the group is about really getting to the heart of what the Course is teaching, then I think that synergistic effect really helps. And if you can get into a group where you've got some people that have been studying it for a while, have got a good understanding of it, that definitely helps. And if you're fortunate enough to find a group where it's led by someone who, lives it, and breathes it and so on, then so much the better. But I believe the Course would probably say that however you started is appropriate. Even if it was just, I picked it up and I didn't understand it and I set it down, there was a seed planted. There was something there. So it's all for the good. The Course says it takes us a long time to figure out that everything's in our favor.
Well, it's definitely turned my life around and my world around, and it's taken both of us to where we are today. And I see it as a huge compliment to anything else that continues to take me along this spiritual path. And again, the reason why I think why I'm doing this interview is to help those who are curious, who know very little about it, rather than to speak to anybody who's a long-time practitioner or follower of the Course in Miracles. They already know. So the question I want to ask you is, what would be your take to my assessment of what the main lessons are of the Course in Miracles? My assessment would be that it's to see that we're all one with God. Not a novel concept for sure, but this really takes you, as you say, into the deep end of the metaphysical pool.
Yes.
About how that becomes reality if we pursue it hard enough. And then the second, which is probably the first reason, is to realize that this is, as Easterners often proclaim, Maya, an illusion, a dream, a play, and the script will write us right out of the play as we're ready to awaken to the realization that this isn't who we really are.
Yeah.
Did I come close in your estimation to two of the main purposes
Yes,
of it?
you did. And of course there's other themes that make that work, like forgiveness, which is a very main theme in the Course. We're all one with God. There's this song that we sing in unity, we are one. You know, it goes, we are one, we are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And I tell them it's a beautiful song, don't stop singing it, but in truth there is no we. You know, there is no we in oneness. Oneness is oneness. Oneness can't have parts. Oneness can only be oneness. You know, there's a place in the Course where it says that God doesn't know where he ends and his Son begins. You know, there is no difference. I and my Father are one. And I think that's what Jesus was really saying. In the Christian tradition, I know we were always worried about, am I going to recognize anybody in heaven, and will I see my wife, and will my dog be there, and you know, those kind of things. And in the Course it says, no. That's all part of the illusion. That's all part of the Maya. There is only oneness, you know.
Those are fighting words for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
That's very scary. It induces a lot of fear.
A lot of fear. And the funny thing is that it even induces a lot of fear in metaphysical people, not just fundamentalists. You know, metaphysical people are okay with, we are one, but I don't exist. Wait a minute. I don't know if I want to go there. It's real scary.
Well, I lovingly, and I know you know I mean it that way, chide you from time to time, because you always tell everybody in the group, now, who are you? Who are you really? I am a perfect child of God. And I say, no, that's separation in its own way, isn't it? I mean, to really answer that question correctly.
Well, the answer is I am the perfect child of God.
I am the perfect child of God. Okay,
Yes.
I missed the distinction of that article.
I'm the perfect child of God.
Because if you take it the next logical step, I am God. And that is heresy.
Yeah. In a lot of schools, that's heresy. But all there is God. See, if oneness is all there is, then all there can be is God. You know, the Course says there's nothing outside of that. There's nothing else within it. You know, we say God is, and we cease to speak.
Yeah.
That's how the Course puts it. You know, because that's all there is. I think the hard thing about that, Ted, even for those of us that believe that, I think the best we can do right now is get an intellectual understanding of it and then start to get an experience of it. But we're flatlanders. Mm-hmm. You're familiar, I'm sure, with the old Victorian story of Flatland.
I am, only because I sat in the class where you explained it. Can you succinctly explain that to anybody seeing this, because it's so important?
It really is.
Flatlander is?
If you're familiar with the spiritual cinema, you know, the movies that come out, they did a very nice 30-minute cartoon rendition of this that really explains it. I'm going to be showing it here, so you may want to see it.
Okay.
But it's actually a Victorian story, and it's just so amazingly deep. But it's about, long story short, everything in Flatland can only move forward and back and side to side. So everything is a square, triangle, rectangle, etc. The highest form is a circle, less sides. The less sides, the higher evolved you are. But they can only live on one plane. And he gets this dream one night of being visited by someone from Spaceland. Someone could actually move up and down. And the way he describes this being from Spaceland, which was a sphere, and you can kind of see this if coming from a Flatland perspective, it said, I saw a point that became a circle and then shrunk back into a point again. Well, if a sphere were passing through a single plane, that's exactly what it looked like. Point would hit, the circle would expand and go back. So that's all he could describe, was a point that went to a circle and back in. Well, that's Flatland. See?
One dimension, in other words.
One dimension. It can't get its mind around up, down. You know, in the story, it's a real cute story. When he finally gets it, because this character gives him the experience of that, he goes, there's like north and south, but up and down, but not. And he's trying to explain it, and he can't.
Mm-hmm.
He just can't, even after he's had the experience. Just like when we have a spiritual experience, of a real, one of those peak spiritual experiences, and we come back and try and tell people, you can't. You can't put those into words. Well, this is the same thing. So now we've got this little flatland person that's got some concept of what this third dimension is, but can't really understand it, can't really even explain it. There are no words in flatland for it. Well, that's what we're trying to do as human beings, talking about the spiritual realm. Mm-hmm. We're using words, which the Course says are twice removed from reality. They're symbols of symbols. A word's a symbol of a thought. Well, the thought came first, and the thought's just a symbol of something. So we're tied as three-dimensional beings, as human beings, as these limited beings we think we are, to try and understand something that's beyond our realm, beyond our dimension. So when we start saying God is one, and all there is God, and we are one with God, but there is no we, that's a bunch of flatlanders sitting around trying to describe.
So why
God
even
really
bother
is.
trying to explain the unexplainable?
It's my belief that most of the time we get an intellectual understanding of things first. And then as we apply that intellectual understanding in our life, we get an emotional experience around that, and that's what we call an experience. An experience is something you can't argue with. You may not be able to explain it. You may not even be able to define it, but you can't argue with it. Once you've had the experience, the Course says that a universal theology is impossible. But a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. So it's the experience. So I've had an experience of this oneness. I've had an experience of no we.
Do you want to share a little bit of that with us?
Well, I can't because I'd have to put it into words. You know what I mean? It's a feeling. It's a.
Yeah, but you're pretty good with words.
It's a knowing that all there is.
Let me try it from one other perspective, because you're a pretty good role model for me and for others. For when there's catastrophe, tragedy, illness in our family, you're quick to say to yourself, if not immediately, within minutes, I know I'm the perfect child of God. I know I'm in this illusion that the Course explains. I know that this, what appears to be deep physical or mental anguish being suffered by my daughter isn't real. I need to act with humility and compassion, but the real me is unaffected by it.
Yes.
Does that begin to approximate what a spiritual experience might be for you, to have a realization that crisp, that nothing material is?
I think what we were talking about goes beyond that.
Okay.
Because when I have those kind of experiences, I'm not really functioning in the world, per se. But the experience you're talking about, I think, is what allows us to open to that, to really understand who we are, to get ourselves out of the way. I've shared the story, I believe, maybe when you were in class, about my daughter having cancer when she was in school. And when she gave me the news...
She's in college at this point?
She was in college, and she called, and, Dad, I just found out I have cancer. And it wasn't more than 2 minutes that I was hit with the, oh my gosh, this is my daughter, da, da, da. And then this peace came over me. Because I know who she is. I know who I am. Who she really is can't be affected by cancer or anything else. And if I really love my daughter, the most loving thing I can do is see her for who she really is. Not for this illusionary facade that we've taken on as being human. And that kind of understanding came over me. Now, I didn't say to her, that's okay, it's just an illusion, babe, don't worry about it. I honestly don't remember what I did say, because it was at that point that I said, okay, Spirit, I get it. Guide me, what do I need to be? Which comes out of a beautiful section in the Course called True Empathy, where it says we don't know how to empathize. We think that empathy means joining in the suffering. Oh, you poor thing. And the Course is saying, no, that's not true empathy. That suffering, that pain of any kind is not lessened by joining in it. You're actually amplifying it, You look at someone and go, oh, you poor thing. What you're saying is, yeah, you should be hurting, So the Course says, see them for who they are. Basically, I'm going to paraphrase here, but it basically says, see them for who they are, step aside, let Spirit work through you, and you'll see what empathy really is. A real joining. Because empathy in its true sense is a joining, but not in the suffering, not in the pain. So that's what I did with my daughter. That, in combination with my mother's teaching, I said we were raised fundamentalists, but there's just a lot of great things I learned from there. And one of them was my mom's favorite Bible verse, Romans 8:28, which is, all things work together for good to them that love the Lord. And I can remember her saying to me, Tony, it doesn't say some things, it doesn't say most things, it says all things. And that's got me through a lot. There are many lines in the Course that say the same thing. It's just everything is working for you, everything is in your favor, And knowing that, and knowing who my daughter really is, allowed me to get through the whole thing in peace. And it really turned out exactly as, one as it was supposed to, but exactly as everything working as it should, because of that experience, my daughter then went on to explore some alternative healing and so on and so forth, and is now a practitioner of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and is incredible in her field, highly regarded, and it's all because of what she went through, and she knows that, and we've shared that.
One thing that you touched upon several times already, and you do it a lot in the Course on Tuesday nights, is to go to Spirit. In the East, when we go to India every year, we encounter a fair number of people who live that 24/7, it seems. Even in their dreams, they're going to Spirit, but if not sleeping, every waking hour they're going to Spirit. It's not that that's not emphasized in Western religions, but it's really hammered in the Course in Miracles. A little bit more about that, because you talk about it so much, and you just explained how you turn to Spirit so much, even in calamity.
I believe that the whole Course is saying what it's saying, the way it says it, and the lessons and everything, to get us to one point. And that's to just turn your entire life over to Spirit. Spirit will guide you. There's a place in the Course that says, you go to Spirit and say, where would you like me to go? What would you like me to do? What would you like me to say, and to whom? Well, you can ask that question all the time, and should. And I believe that's what the whole Course is trying to get us to do, is trying to get us to accept this help that's always been available, that talks to everyone. You talk about when you go to India and people listening to Spirit, that would be blasphemy. And some, when I was a Christian, that would have been blasphemy. You only get to listen to Spirit if you do certain things. It is my belief that Spirit speaks to everybody all the time, in every language, everywhere around the world. Call it what you call it.
And just for clarification, is Spirit Spirit? Is Spirit God? Is Spirit the Holy Spirit? Is Spirit Tony?
The Course says that Spirit is the activating agent of mind. So it's an aspect of mind. It's the active part of mind. Again, if it's one, see, we're talking parts here again. And when there isn't any of that, there's only, so we're trying to figure this out, almost like an aspect. So I think of Spirit as an aspect of mind, because all there is mind, all there is Spirit. There is only one Spirit.
And you differentiate mind from body, brain, and everything else that's physical.
Oh yes, everything physical. I mean, all there is mind.
So it's mind, soul.
Well, yeah, and I use soul and spirit interchangeably, which is a lot of what the Course does. It uses it more interchangeably, and it talks about the only time it might use soul differently is in a reference to a Bible quote. It talks about that in the Manual for Teachers. So I kind of equate the two. I've gone more with, of course, the Course's distinction for it, which is all there is spirit, all there is God. There's just that one. And those are just ways that me as a flatlander has a way of trying to get my mind around it. My belief is there is only one Spirit. And another blasphemous statement, if you'll allow me, is that in truth we're all the Holy Spirit. There is only one. We are the Holy Spirit. Course doesn't tell you that right away, but it's in there. What my belief is says that we have all screwed up so much. We've made so many mistakes. We've, dropped the ball so many times that it's hard enough for us to believe in ourselves as it is, as human beings sometimes, that Spirit is kind of pictured as something in our mind that's another thing, another entity, another beingness, if you will, that's there to guide us and help us through. And that's what the Course speaks about, our guide, our teacher. Okay? But as you start reading the Course, reading some of the lines, which you begin to realize, well, there really is only one Spirit. There really is only oneness. So I believe what happens is we begin to heal through forgiveness, to let go of those beliefs about ourselves that aren't true, and remember about who we really are and what is true about ourselves, that the more we begin to identify with Spirit, you know, and then we begin to realize, wow, oh, there is a Spirit.
Help me how that process that you just talked about can help others find a genuine spiritual experience. We were talking about that earlier. You said it's impossible to describe, put into words. It's from another dimension. We're flatlanders, or we're three-dimensional people.
Yeah.
There are many other dimensions we can't relate to. And yet I know a lot of people are searching for it. It's almost as if, well, if I had a spiritual experience, I'd take this business seriously.
Yeah.
But then there's a growing number of people who say, even if I don't get a spiritual experience, I want to put my heart into it because nothing else is as important as the progression of my spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
So how can people realistically convince themselves who are watching this to not just pick up A Course in Miracles or a study guide or go to a church or a temple, but what would really allow them to get on the path in a way that I see it? It's school, and if you stay steady to the Course, more and more will be revealed to you.
Yeah.
Because I see that happening with the people who come to your classes on Tuesday nights. I see it in other study circles. And yet I see what I think of as a vast majority of people who are stuck in that other world called, I'm giving up. Nothing's come to me yet in my first 50 years on this earth. I doubt if anything will come to me if I try harder.
Yeah. Yeah. In traditional Christianity, in the book of Corinthians, it speaks of the gifts of the Spirit. And basically they boil down to what I call peace, love, and joy. Those are the gifts of the Spirit. That's what the Course will bring you, is peace, love, and joy. You know, there really is no greater experience than that, just experiencing that peace. And it becomes a peace that, as the Bible might say, that passes all understanding, and people around you are upset and you're at peace. The love that comes from not judging, you know, the love that doesn't have a because after it. The joy that comes from just being, not necessarily even doing, but just being. That's the experience that comes from studying the Course. And it doesn't come after you read the first lesson or the second. It might come anytime. But it becomes, as you study the Course, it becomes more and more evident to you. You begin to notice things. You begin to notice that you're at peace when it would have upset you. You know, I had one of the people in my study group said the way it happened to them was they found themselves driving on the freeway. And before that, they would go, her husband said she would go 10 miles out of her way not to have to drive on the freeway because she couldn't stand all the car. She said she just found herself driving on the freeway again, and she looked around and goes, I'm at peace. Mm-hmm. This is great. And she's been driving on it ever since. Sometimes it comes that way. You just realize I'm not as upset as I used to be. That's the real experience we're after.
And I should add that when you do that on Tuesday nights, maybe once every 6 months in my experience, who can relate to this, that you're at a better place today than you were 6 months ago or when you started this study group, because the peace, love, and joy comes quicker into your life after a moment of upheaval, let's say. And everybody raises their hand.
Everybody raises their hand. And the evidence is your peace, love, and joy begins to become a more consistent experience. Your upsets become less dramatic, they become less in duration, less intense, and they become less frequent. Well, that happens over a period of time. So you have to start observing yourself. You know, observing your mind. The Course says we're far too tolerant of mind wandering. You know, so you have to start observing yourself. There's the real evidence that things are going on. Now, what most people are looking for is that peak experience, that revelatory experience, and I've never had one of those. I've never had one of those where all of a sudden, you know, a light comes and colors come and I'm one with everything. I've never had one of those. The Course actually addresses that very early on in the first chapter, and it calls it a revelation. And it says those come from God. We're not in charge of those. So how do you have one of those? You don't, not intentionally. And I know a lot of people try. And there are even schools of thought that will try to teach you how to do that, to eventually reach samadhi or some other state of. And the Course says, no, that's not what it's about. It's not about those. Those will come from God. Now, it's been my observation of people over the years because my partner, Susan, she's had one or two of those. And like everybody else, she can't describe it. She does, but she goes, that isn't it. You just can't put it into words. And the Course says that. You won't be able to describe them. But my observation has been that they come when they're supposed to, that those experiences are primarily, what people get out of that is, as I said earlier, you can't deny an experience. So it sets people on a spiritual understand or a level of faith and commitment that they can't back away from now because they've had this kind of experience. Does everybody need that? No.
I would say almost as good, arguably even better, is that slow, steady progression of advanced understanding and peace, love, and joy that seems to come the root that you're talking about. Which leads me to a question that's really the silliest question I can think of. I've asked it 100 times of 100 people talking about our teacher in India, and it really applies to this as well. So you can dismiss it briefly if you want to, but why aren't more people interested in A Course in Miracles? And there's almost 7 billion people on this earth now. It's been around since the 60s. It's been popularized all over the world, and yet it's such a tiny handful of people, whether they're intellectuals or people who are just grasping to get a greater picture in their mind of who they really are. It's there and available, but so few people are interested.
Yeah. This world, as we know it, was made so that we wouldn't get an intellectual understanding. This world was made, the Course says, for us to hide from God. That's why we're here. We thought we could do enough separation that God wouldn't even find us. So the purpose of the world isn't to wake up. The purpose of the world is to keep you asleep. Now, that voice that's in our mind, that's always been there, the Course says that God gave the answer the moment the separation occurred. That's the Holy Spirit. That's that inner voice. At any moment, anyone can shift their purpose for this world and make it a place to wake up. And then it becomes the purpose. But that has to be a choice. It isn't built into the system. At least not the world system. It's built into our mind system, but we have to make that choice. Our identity, to do that, ultimately we have to give up our identity. We've talked about there is no we in oneness. That's the ultimately scary part. We have to give up this identity that we're so attached to. We think we're our driver's license. Here I am, this is me, and this is what I do, and here's my experiences. And none of that matters. It's all part of the illusion. You've never left heaven. You're still safe in heaven, as the Course says, dreaming you're in exile. None of that really matters. But we don't want to give it up because as a flatlander, it's all we know. So the system was built to keep us from waking up. That's its purpose. That's why it was made.
And yet we do have this process called our ability to think and be curious. And you would think sooner or later, many people, if not most, would follow that path to a new ocean of thought, of understanding, or a possible understanding. It leads me to a question that Jody has when we were talking about thinking before, and she wants to know, is spirit different from thinking?
All there is thought. You're a thought. I'm a thought. There's no such thing as not thinking. Can't be done. That would be mind stopping. Mind doesn't stop. Mind always thinks. It's my belief that we have confused thinking with the intellect. When the intellect gets a hold of thought, well, then it can run rampant and it can go off in all kinds of directions. When, in a lot of meditative practices, when they talk about getting to that state of no thought, which I've been to. I started meditating, I started doing TM back in '69 when I was in the Navy.
72.
Yeah. So I've been meditating a long time, and I've reached that state of no thought. The Course calls that a distraction.
The meditation?
No, the no thought.
The no thought
Yeah.
idea.
Because the mind never really stops. It can't. What we want to stop, though, is that intellectual mind, that ego mind, that what's some called the monkey mind. That we want to shut off. But thought will always be there. Has to be, because you're a thought. That's all you are, is a thought in the mind of God.
So you just answered that question. What do you want to do with the rest of your life, Tony?
Boy, first thing can you remind us, whatever Spirit wants me to do. You know,
And your way of discerning what Spirit really wants you to do from what your inclination or your desire is?
yeah, you know, I've tried for a long time now to live that state of, you know, just what do you want me to do? What do you want me to go? And it's been working great.
But how do you know, is my question, and it's a good question a lot of people ask me. How do you know that this is really what Spirit wants you to do? You think you were listening, you think you caught this notion,
Yeah.
but how do you know it's not different from what your desire, what your real desire to do is?
Yeah. Well, there's a lesson in the Course that says, I do not perceive my own best interest. The Course says, I never know what's good for me, ever. I don't know what will work and what won't, you know, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, I don't know. Once you get that, then you go, okay, Spirit, what do you want me to do next? And you try and do that every moment. You know, I do. I've had a lot of aspirations and dreams in my life and goals in my life, and I've reached almost all of them. You know, I've had an incredible life, just. But it was trying to figure it out my way. And now as I see that incredible life that I've lived, I can see it led me to right where I am. You know, I've been in the Bricklayers Union, the Cement Finishers Union, the Carpenters Union. I've drilled for oil in the Gulf of Mexico. I had my own chain of women's diet and fitness centers. I spent 1 year of my life submerged on a submarine. And that's just kind of some of the things I've done. I've been a national marketing director for major companies and so on, but had my own consulting business. I'm a webmaster. I do a lot of different things. But they all led me to what I'm doing right now. All of those things I call upon, each and every one of them, even the construction trades around the building here. They all come in handy. They all led me to right here. And somewhere in there I know Spirit was guiding me, but I'm going to borrow something from John Mundy, who is a very great Course in Miracles teacher. He's been around probably longer than just about anybody around the Course now. And he talks about, in the Course, it talks about God's plan for salvation. And he says, that's GPS. God's plan for salvation. And he says, it works just like a GPS, right? If I want to get from here to heaven, the best way to go is listen to my GPS and go straight, but occasionally I'll take a little side trip off onto some little ego tangent. But no matter where I go, guess what my GPS does? Recalculates. And it says, now, from where you are right now, the shortest way to heaven is here. And no matter where I go, it'll always give me my shortest route right back to heaven. So it's my GPS. So that's what listening to Spirit will get you. You know, give you your GPS. As what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, you know, I don't think Spirit reveals a whole lot of future. You know, Spirit primarily works in the now. That's all the time there is. But there's some things that happen in the now that kind of give you flashes and pictures of directions that things will go. And, you know, and I get little, my way of understanding has more been more what they call clairsentient. I'm not, you know, clairvoyant. I don't see images and pictures in Technicolor and 3D like a lot of people do. That'd be great. I'm not clairaudient much. I don't get voices, you know. This inner voice is more of an inner knowing that I've come very comfortable with, and that's kind of how it shows up for me. So I've been led on some projects. As you know, I'm pastoring the center here, and that'll be a big part of what I do. We've been led to do some work within the school systems around the principles of A Course in Miracles. Don't tell them that, though. We've disguised all those principles in secular language, and it's having an incredible impact in the public school systems now. We've just been invited into the Mayfield School District, and they want us to do the program K through 12 now.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we've got some revamping to do on it to get it to the K level, and we got some ideas on what we're going to do. So, but it's all Course principles. So I think I've got a lot to do there. I've got some huge little projects that Spirit says, this is what I want you to do now, that if that's what I do now, it's going to lead to something very big. So I've got some big projects that will keep me busy for the rest of my life, I'm sure, and beyond.
I wanted to ask you one question that touches a little bit into a personal slice of life, so feel free to tell me to go pound salt. When people have any adversity in their lives, and that goes for all of us probably everywhere, without exception, you turn to whatever you have intrinsically that you possess that can be an aid to pull you through it. I've noticed your commentary with regards to tragedy in your lives, as you've already described it as being very useful to me. Maybe if Tony can do that, I can apply some of these approaches to my own personal life, and I'm sure anybody watching this might draw that similar conclusion. But I also know you to be somebody whose body has some fragility to it because of some knocks along the way that you can't maybe account for, that bring you some moments of broken body, not broken spirit, not broken mind.
Yeah.
How do you muscle up the Course in Miracles plus your other spiritual tradition to cope with it and to learn from it? I know how you cope with it, so let's focus in. How do you learn from this? That this isn't a punishing God treating you for sins of the past.
Yeah.
This isn't something other than an element of positive blessing in your life.
Okay. I recently went through a couple weeks of one of those times where your body is not functioning the way you want it to function. And it was a lot of cleansing and clearing of things that were deep in my system, had been there for a while and so on. Not pleasant at all. But the Course says that sickness is a defense against the truth.
Missed that lesson.
Yeah, it's a whole section in the text, that sickness is a defense against the truth. Our whole body is a defense against the truth. We're not bodies. We're eternal, limitless, changeless beings, and there's only one of us. That's who I really am, and that can't be hurt, can't be offended, can't be changed in any way. So our bodies are part of the ego's plan to keep our minds diverted from who we really are, because we put a lot of attention on this body. The Course calls it the hero of the dream. Mm-hmm. Without the body, it says there would be no dream. We spend most of our time tending to this body in one way or another, or making sure it's going to be okay in the future. So it's a real distraction from who we really are. Now, it isn't a bad thing. It's a neutral thing, as the Course would say. It really has no meaning, but we give it a lot of meaning. Mm-hmm. A lot of meaning.
The end all be all for a lot of people.
Oh, yes. And in some ways for all of us, in one way or another, because it's going to end what we think of as life. Mm-hmm. It isn't life, but what I tell my folks a lot of times is this is as dead as you're ever going to get right now. You can only get more alive from here. So the body, in one way or another, has us all tied to this illusion. And getting sick, having a lot of pain in it, is one way to really distract us from who we really are. It's really hard to be in a lot of physical discomfort and go, yeah, I'm the perfect child of God. Peace, love, and joy. It's hard when you're having that kind of pain. So it is a distraction from who you really are. So when I get that way, Ted, I go to gratitude. One of Helen Schuckman's other works is Song of Prayer, and it's a beautiful, beautiful work. It's an extension of the Course. And it speaks of prayer being like a ladder, and the highest rung is gratitude. That's real prayer, is when you're in gratitude. So I understand now when my body gets sick, isn't behaving the way I want it to, detoxing, whatever it's doing, that's just my body getting rid of things that I don't need. It's my body's way of purging itself, healing itself. Just like in my mind, when I have to get rid of beliefs that aren't true about myself, it's sometimes painful to give those beliefs up.
And should we worry much about sometimes the intensity? If it's a high intensity, whatever the assault might be, depression, physical illness, heart attack, recovering from a car accident, that this might snuff out our spiritual zest, thirst for spiritual understanding? I mean, you can get so low, you just don't want to think there. My wife used to say about a friend of hers who would say, you better be all prayed up when you're sick.
Yes.
Because it's not something you'd easily find again when your body is down.
Right. I think it takes, the more you understand it when you go into it, in other words, the more you know who you really are, the easier it is to connect it with when you're sick. Mm-hmm. And if you have an understanding that this body, its major purpose in the ego's terms, is to keep you from remembering who you are, and it's going to take some very extreme methods of doing that, like getting sick and very painful and so on, then it helps me to remember more of who I am. And it was amazing to me even that when I was laying there, just not feeling well at all, that I stated as much gratitude as I did. But yeah, its purpose is to defend against the truth. So yeah, when you're sick, that's going to be a tough time to go, because it's a very intense way of getting you to think you're something other than this perfect, eternal, limitless, changeless being that you are.
And did your mind of being in gratitude also extend to the physical state you were in at the moment? Because you knew, maybe you knew, that somehow that could bring you to an eventual even greater understanding of who you are.
Yes, it's a cleansing. It's a healing. So thank you. And if this is what I have to go through to let it go, then thank you.
A couple of minutes remaining, and let's just use it in one of two ways. This is a little unfair because I'm not giving you any time to think about it. The lessons from the Course right now that are the biggest guidepost in your life.
Wow. Since this is for people who may not have a lot of understanding of the Course, it is 3 books in one. It's the text, it's a workbook, it's a manual for teachers. The workbook is a lesson a day for 365 days. And I love the introduction to the workbook. I read that many times because it says some great things in there. And one of the things it says is you don't have to believe this, you don't even have to agree with it. You may even find it offensive. Doesn't matter, just do them. You know, just go through it. And eventually they'll start working their magic on you. The first part of the workbook is designed to start taking apart your current belief system. And then the last part is to rebuild the new one. You know, it's more of a direct communication to God, you know, kind of thing. There are many lessons, I guess. It depends on where I am in the moment that really stand out for me.
How about lesson number 1?
Oh, yeah. I've said many times, if I could just get lesson number 1, that'd be it.
And my shorthand version of that might be a little bit off the mark, is nothing is as it appears.
Nothing I see means anything. Nothing I see means anything. Number 2 is I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. Right? And basically what it's trying to show us is that we've got this world out here, which is really a projection of our mind. And then everything that our eyes light on, everything that comes in, our senses seem to get around, we give a meaning to. Is that what it really is? No, it's just the meaning we gave it. Well, the problem is, and there's nothing wrong with that, the problem is that becomes what we think it is. And when someone else has a different meaning for it, then, well, maybe we ought to talk about this. And if it's different enough, maybe we should fight about this kind of thing. And it all comes from the meanings we give stuff. And the Course is trying to tell us, look, if you'll just take your meaning off, because it's meaningless anyway. This world doesn't mean a thing. If you'll take your meaning off of it, then the Course says, Spirit can now come in and write a meaning on there for you. Mm-hmm. And now the Spirit will give it an entirely different meaning.
And one of the ways in which you and other teachers and students have helped me is to see it through the prism of needing to unlearn a lot that we've learned incorrectly.
Yes, getting rid of the misbeliefs that we have. If I can just kind of simplify how I kind of teach the Course, is really this simple. You were created by God. You were created in His likeness and image, which means you're eternal, limitless, and changeless. You're one with Him, but we won't go there right now. Would you say you're perfect, limitless, eternal, and changeless? You can't change that. You can think that you have. God gave you free will. You can think whatever you want. However, the Course says when you think something God doesn't think, it's like the mind goes to sleep and begins to dream. So all we're doing is thinking thoughts that God doesn't think. And now we're getting the experience of it. The Course called it a tiny, mad idea, right, that we took seriously. And now we're having this experience of being separate from God. Well, we can't be separate from God. You can't change any of that. Okay, but you can dream that you have, ergo the dream, the Maya, the illusion. So this whole thing is an illusion. Now we've got this illusion, this dream with all kind of dream figures and things and peoples and buildings and so on, and now we start giving it meaning. Well, now we're attached. And what I learned through my Hindu years, my Buddhist years, it's about giving up attachment. And when I got to the Course, I realized what attachment is. As soon as I give anything a meaning, I'm attached. No, it has a meaning for me. I'm attached. For me to truly become unattached, what I have to do is give up my meaning that I think anything has, and the only way I can do that is to say, okay, I don't know what it means, Spirit, tell me. Now we're back to what, as you said, is one of the main themes of the Course, is listening to Spirit. Mm-hmm. Spirit will give you the meaning of absolutely everything, everyone, any event, any place, object, it doesn't matter. Spirit will give you the meaning for it, or you can give it a meaning, and as soon as I give it a meaning,
well, it is a training. It is something you have to apply yourself. It doesn't happen overnight. I'd be a fool to expect to have you or anybody else explain what the Course in Miracles is in an hour. We did the best we could here, but what we can do to further people's understanding, and we're blessed to have these little satsangs, as we call them, these online discussions about spirituality seen in 150 countries now by people who sometimes don't even know why they're watching these videos, who will write us. It opens a door perhaps for them. What I want you to talk about is how that door about A Course in Miracles might be open for somebody watching from some far-flung place right now, because you're finally putting up your discourses, your classroom settings online on a regular basis.
Yes.
And if people find this sort of a starting point for them, they can further their understanding of A Course by following you. How do they do that?
Thank you. First of all, if you're watching this program, you have access to the internet. And if you have access to the internet, you have access to A Course in Miracles, because you can find it online, and you can read it online, and there are study groups online. So if this seems like a path you might want to travel, you might want to look through the internet and find some connection there. I'm putting up my study groups online. I'm starting to do that, and I do a Tuesday night study group, and we'll last for about an hour and a half, something like that. And we're going to be putting those up online. We are at unitycenteronline.org. And at the top bar, you'll see something that says UCH videos. And you'll see a little drop-down window. And one of them says A Course in Miracles. And you click on that, and then there'll be a variety of different nights and topics that we'll talk about. And you can just click on that and listen to us if you'd like. We'd love to have you, listen and send in your comments.
One last word on love, and it's yours. I'm not even sure how I mean you to answer that, but I know it's often referred to by the Course.
Yeah. Love is actually referred to right in the introduction of the Course. And what it says is, love can't be taught. It says, this Course will not teach me of love, for that's beyond what can be taught. The Course is about removing our blocks to our awareness of it. And it says love is our natural inheritance. As human beings, we first experience love as an emotion, as many things. But after you start getting rid of these beliefs about yourself that aren't true, you begin to realize that love isn't an emotion. You begin to realize what the Course says is true. The Course says, teach only love, for that is what you are. Love is not an emotion, even though it's experienced that way at first. But the more we get rid of its opposite, which is fear, beliefs that aren't true, then love is just there. The Course says we don't have to seek for love. It's always there. We just have to seek for the barriers we built against it. And then you begin to realize that you are the love, that God is love. And if God is love and He gave you all that He is, then therefore you must be love. And you begin to realize after a while that love is a way of being, not an emotion. Nothing that comes and goes or rises and falls with the tide or who you're with or the circumstance you're in. Love is simply who you are.
Gee, I'm kind of glad I asked that question. Tony, thank you very, very much.
Wow, thank you.
For the world to eavesdrop on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Listen to the audio as well.
Oh, you're kidding?
No, we do.
Distracted with a
Could
thought.
be good.
Yeah, could be.
I like to think about somebody in Azerbaijan watching Andhra Pradesh in India thinking, well, maybe I can't even repeat the names that I haven't heard before. I don't know how to spell it.
You begin to realize that love isn't an emotion. You begin to realize what the Course says is true. The Course says, teach only love, for that is what you are.